Hi, political marketing class. Sorry I'm not there today. Zachary's really sick, so I had to stay home. So I just want to bring up a couple of things that I want. There are also dogs here. Guys, shush. A couple of things that I want to talk about today. One, I want to talk about the speeches from Tuesday. Those were very obviously political marketing events, and so they're relevant to our class. Trump is selling his position. Schumer and Pelosi are selling their position. And so, how well did they do if you're looking at this as a marketing event? Was it a success? So my analysis is that Trump was, in fact, pretty effective, even though, he wasn't very animated in the way he was speaking, and that's not usually a good way to make your points. His message, the text of what he was saying, was actually really effective at what it was trying to do, right? He's very clearly focused on this idea that there's a crisis on the border, that there is danger, that the government shutdown is necessary because of the severity. He illustrated the danger with really specific examples about the threats that are posed by an open border, by an unsecured border. He gave specific examples of harms that have been done. He talked about drugs. He talked about violence. And so he very effectively branded this deadlock that we're having in terms of the government shutdown as an issue about safety, right? And so I think he did that actually pretty well. Pelosi and Schumer really didn't do very well at all. They didn't humanize or personalize the story. They talked briefly about the harm that was being done by the shutdown, but they mostly seemed interested in fact-checking Trump and repeating lines that are all about politics and all about process. They didn't really speak to the American people, so I don't know how effective that was. But I do think Trump's speech was probably effective at what it was aimed to do. And I think what it was aimed to do was not to change anybody's mind. It was aimed at bolstering the resolve of his supporters to stand firm, to get folks who are in his base, to get folks who are Republicans to say, yeah, we got to, get through this shutdown. We got to hold firm because this is really important. There are serious dangers here. So I do actually think he did a good job at what he was trying to do. I don't actually think either side was trying to convince anybody. Okay, moving on to the second issue. It loaded a PDF online for you to read on Mole. It's called What Goes with Red and Blue. And I want you to read that article and write up a reflection about it. Just 1 or 2 pages that's going to be due next week. And I want to make a couple of points about the paper to get you ready to read it. So when the authors talk about partisan stereotypes in the article, in the language of our class of political marketing, what they're really talking about is partisan branding. So that folks in these experiments know what a Democrat is, what a Republican is. It means that they understand what those brand names mean. And so that's an important part of reading it. And then what's going on in this article is they're trying to figure out if people just have blind partisan loyalty or if there's actually something to that they do really understand why they're red or why they're blue. And they're contrasting that with research from 1964 when Phil Converse found that people really weren't ideologically distinct. And I think it's important to keep in mind that what was true in the 1960s really isn't true today because people have become increasingly sorted. It used to be, back in the 50s and 60s, that knowing if somebody was a Democrat or a Republican really didn't tell you very much about what issue positions they held. Today, the parties are very clearly sorted. You know that a Republican is probably pro-life. You know that a Democrat is probably concerned about global warming. So the results have changed because the world has changed. And so it's maybe not that surprising that now people really do know what the parties stand for. So in terms of the homework, what I want you to do is briefly summarize what they're doing, make sure you understand and illustrate that you understand what it means to do a conjoint experiment. As the authors note, this is something that's been taken from the field of marketing to use for politics, so it's important to know what a conjoint experiment is. And then I want you to look at the findings as illustrated in the various tables and talk about what you found was surprising, what you found was not surprising, and just what the overall message is from this article. What's the takeaway for you in terms of partisan sorting or partisan branding? All right, so I look forward to reading your responses about the piece, and I'll see you soon.